All right, gentlemen, let's get started. Welcome to eduKan TV, our first show this fall. For those of you who are new to joining us, the format is very casual. We're trying to find topics that are pertinent to higher education that may or may not be being talked about on the campus or in other locations, and so we want to have an open forum. Typically, our guests are remote. We have the luxury of being at a conference today, and our guests are here with us, so we're excited to have them join us. If you would like to text your questions in, they will appear down there, and Leslie, who is our in-studio coordinator, will read your questions to us. It can be questions in general or questions very specific to one of our guests. So today's topics are, we're going to talk about the talent drift in higher education. We're going to talk about great talent leaving and going to other companies, maybe companies that are servicing higher education. And we have with us Dr. Myk Garn, and we're also going to talk about illiteracy on the college campus, particularly at the community college level. And we have with us Kevin Brungardt to talk about that. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Why don't we start out with you introducing yourself and give us a little history of how you got here.
All right. Well, I'm Myk Garn. I'm a lapsed photographer. My undergraduate degree is in that, and I taught photography at the community college level for about 9 years, and got involved in doing satellite broadcasts and things on photography. And that got me into distance learning. So I've been involved in that in better than 20 years, both on the corporate side. I worked with Eastman Kodak, but then for a number of universities. My most recent path has been up through the Georgia University system, where I was director of distance learning for the system and did a lot of work in the mid-90s helping faculty start using technology. I moved to Kentucky with their virtual university initiative in 1999 as the chief academic officer. I was there for about 9 years. Ended up, when I was leaving, I was the executive director of the project, and spent the last 4 years in Atlanta at the Southern Regional Education Board working with state-level education technology folks to use technology in instruction to increase affordability and student success. That's about 16 states I got to kind of kibitz across. And about 2 months ago, I made the decision that I need to be more active in driving change, and found a good opportunity with a company called Straighter Line to get a little more ground level activity involved in helping institutions figure out how to use online courses.
Excellent. Thank you, Myk. Kevin, tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Kevin Brungardt. I have been a teacher in the state of Kansas for more years than I care to think about. Started at the high school and junior high level, taught that for 20 years before moving up to the community college level. Moved to a small community college in southwest Kansas, approximately 2,000 students, give or take, and taught English for 8 years, and after that time kind of moved right into doing some administrative work, and worked for the college as administrator for 8 years before retiring here just a couple of months ago. And I look to here in another month and a half picking up an interim dean position at another community college.
Just couldn't stay out of it, could you?
Don't really want to. Never really planned to. I want to see what else is out there. I think if you stick with something too long, you get stagnant, and this is a new opportunity.
So let's talk a little bit about talent leaving traditional higher education, and want to make that distinction. Not that we're segmenting for-profit education, but we're talking, as the dean in Kansas, recruiting a faculty member to come to campus, to teach on campus. Many rural schools face that. How do you get a faculty member to come? And if the faculty have turnover, even administrators, they start moving away, Myk, you're a great example. You had a ton of experience in higher education, very traditional higher education from the standpoint of being either a not-for-profit or a state entity, and you've left. You've hopped out of the higher ed world from the teaching and the learning aspect to a corporation. How come?
Well, I wonder if we think about it, if you're not centered on a campus, which of course is a wonderful experience, that you're not in the right place. And a lot of my colleagues, and I think I've seen a lot of colleagues move to different positions and different things, maybe with companies, maybe with different associations and things. Over the last couple of years, I think at heart we're really change agents. And as you think about that, sometimes you just need to move on and try different levers at moving change. I know in Kentucky, I was there 9 years. We'd gone through our third strategic plan, and I just felt like now we're getting to the point where it's kind of churning, and I really need to look at, can I bring my energy and my perspective to a different direction? And I think that was clearly my thinking when I moved from SREB this spring to a company. This is an internet startup. We're inventing a lot of things as we're going along. I think the last 2 or 3 of my jobs have been like that. So I like that kind of excitement of really starting something new. I'm much more of a creator than I am of a manager.
So are you saying it's harder to be a change agent with inside of the higher ed structure, that it's easier to be on the outside to change it?
I think I felt for years inside is where you needed to drive the change. And over the last couple of years, I felt a shift. I don't know if it's that the opportunities for external change drivers have gotten greater, but I certainly felt this was the time for me to move outside the system, the formal system, and start working from the other direction. I still see it as trying to accomplish the same goals, as helping institutions evolve and be part of a revolution that's going on around them, and be effective participants and thrive and survive in that. This is interesting that it brings a little more direct impact, direct benefits, I think, and a little more focused. Sometimes it's nice to get down to that ground level when things are new and really understand them at that level.
Do you think that maybe with technology, with online education, maybe we can have both? For example, a friend of mine was an associate dean at a community college here in Kansas, and he left to go to work for a for-profit company. He taught anatomy and physiology on the community college campus, left to really become I don't want to say a recruiter, but he manages a territory building articulation agreements for a for-profit, very large school. But because he can still teach online, he still has that student experience, he still has that interaction with the students, yet he's making about 60% more than he was as a faculty member on the community college campus, working for a large for-profit entity.
Well, I think I think as professionals, we love both of that. I mean, if we could just live in the classroom and teach, that'd be great. That's what I enjoy. But I've got a long way from that a long time ago, because it doesn't pay you as well, as you say, and there's more and bigger opportunities and things. It would be great if we could just sit there and do that. There's too much changing around those classrooms, and those are online classrooms. And even now, I need people at institutions who are innovators. Yeah, I still need those now inside partners, because it takes someone who's willing to make a decision with insufficient data, maybe questionable activities and things, at least from a faculty standpoint, and take a gamble on those and say, this sounds really odd, but I think we can make it work. And you need those folks too. Sure. What I like now is I'm pretty confident in the kind of things that we're bringing in, that they really will fit, that they really work, because of that experience I've had inside.
So Kevin, you were charged with recruiting faculty.
That is true.
To move to Western Kansas. And was this a problem? Did you see?
It was a definite problem. There's not much in Southwest Kansas. If you are from an area within the United States or even some other country that is heavily populated, Southwest Kansas does not have much of a population. It does not have the nightlife. It does not have a lot of the things that you would find. There's a culture shock. But we were successful in getting several very good instructors, at least for a short time. And I always figured you're going to have them for a while, then they're going to move on. We're nomadic in a sense as far as our jobs. And you can tell that just by listening to Myk and I. But the thing is that there were some things that appealed to them. The kinds of innovation that we're talking about, the chance to create a program, to take an already established program and move it further. I found believe it or not, I found one of the big things that actually got me several instructors was telling them that at night I could go out and see the stars.
And you can in Kansas go out and see the stars
and
in full view.
That made a wonderful difference. And we kept them for a while. We had several that I just worked with hiring before I left the community college of Garden City. And very good people, very education, they're great. We won't have them forever.
Right. So what can we do from inside of higher education? You talked about being able to be a change agent from outside higher education. What can we do? You know, we joke about committees and the way decisions are made on the traditional college campus. What are some things that, from your experience, we can do to help be more innovative, to meet the needs of educating the population? That President Obama has said that we need 20 million graduates by 2020, and how do we do that? How do we provide the education that students need to be successful? How do we change the way we're doing it? And I guess maybe a bigger question is, do we need to change it? And how do we force that from inside? We can't all leave to go outside to make the change inside, or there won't be anybody inside.
Well, so my personal belief on this is yes, we need to change. That doing what we've been doing isn't going to get us where we need to be. I'm a big fan, devotee of disruptive innovation theory. And in that, there's really two kinds of change. There's incremental change, which is really optimizing what you do now. And then there's disruptive change, which is really moving to very different models that kind of change the game. And if I take that differentiation and apply that to working inside a system as opposed to being an external provocateur or change agent, you need people inside the system who are working every day down in the trenches to make change happen. Mm-hmm. Frequently that change is incremental change to what we're doing now. And inside that system you get really hungry for the big change.
Right.
Because it seems like we're just churning and moving this stuff around. But in fact, you can't just stop doing things the way you're doing them now and move to something new. You need that very evolutionary kind of engine going on the inside. For me, I decided quite a while ago that was good, and that was good for other people to do. That for me, I needed really to focus much more on that disruptive change, because I could help define that and then help think about how that fits into what's going on the inside. So it's both a symbiotic relationship, that you need people who are thinking, well, here's where I think we'll be in 2 or 3 years. How do we reverse engineer that and connect it to what we're doing now? So to me, that's kind of the way I think about how these internal and external drivers kind of work together.
What can we do to help eliminate the talent drift? What can we do to provide more of an opportunity for innovative ideas and innovators within the system?
I don't think you want to eliminate it. I think having people who have been inside the system that go out and working with companies. I know just from talking with the Straighter Line folks, they're great. They're really innovative. They've been thinking deeply about these things. But they've been thinking about them from a different perspective. And one of the reasons they wanted me on board is I've got a lot of experience about thinking about, okay, this is your idea. Here's how I can describe that to an administrator, to a faculty member, to a staff person, to a politician.
Right.
And those are very different things. And so there's a lot of leavening, of framing this, that goes both ways on that. Here's how you can communicate into the system, but here's what I'm hearing in the system that needs to communicate back out to the product developers and things. So, and I think that's experience I bring out to them. So I think that's a necessary part, and you don't want to cut that off. Otherwise, you end up with great ideas that sell to politicians or legislators or to parents, but don't work with faculty, don't work with students.
Okay. I think we have some questions or comments, Leslie.
We do. We have a question from Edward Bowen, who is asking, what are the factors that keep change from happening within the system?
Oh, what a great question from Ed. You were just recently in the trenches, so what are some of the things you've experienced, Kevin?
It seemed to me that we had no shortage of people who will tell you what can't be done. They don't buy into the concept of change. They can talk it, but actually doing it scares them. It's a frightening thing. I think exactly what Mike's talking about is being able to frame it within a description, to communicate it. What do we get on the other side of it? Once I do change, what am I going to get out of it? What's that part of it? I think the satisfaction that goes along with achieving what you want. We talked, and saying in another way, to loosely quote Einstein, he said that if we continue to try to solve our problems using the same thinking that created the problems in the first place, it's not going to work. And so we've got to get outside of that and push that way, and we need like minds. We need people who will sit back and say, okay, I know what the difficulties are, but what's my focus here? My focus is the student. If I have that focus and that's in front of me, and I want to teach that student how to read, I want to teach that student how to do a math equation, that's my primary objective. It's not ease for me, it's what's going to work for that student. And we've got to know our students. That is one thing. Students have changed since I got in this game. I got in the game in the late 70s, and they have changed tremendously. Yeah, I'm old. Anyway, that's part of the deal is that we've got to recognize we may not like the fact that a student learned how to read by a telephone or a computer. But that is the hand that's dealt us. That's what we're going to have to work with. And that's one of the biggest factors that I think we need to know is what are we here for? And once we establish that, then we can do that.
So you bring up an interesting point about really risk. If I'm a faculty member, if I'm an administrator, and I want to take a risk and do something new or try a new technology or change the way I'm teaching, what is the reward for me? Typically we're on a standard pay scale that you follow a grid and it's negotiated, and so someone who is taking absolutely no risk, has been teaching out of the same folder for the last 20 years, and that on Thursday we're going to do lesson 28. What's my incentive as a faculty member or an administrator to come in and say, you know what, I want to turn this thing upside down. I want to flip the classroom. I'm going to use all these new pedagogy skills and stuff that I've learned. Oh, and by the way, I still get paid the same amount. Or is money not an issue? Is it? And then how do you find the faculty members treat someone who is really doing some really disruptive teaching?
It scares them, At the same time, though, I'm a big advocate of you've got to have common competencies within. You've got to have common assessment within. We talked about that a little bit this morning in your address to this conference, Myk, but the thing is if I take a faculty of 10 faculty members teaching psychology, and I have the assessment in place with the competencies, I can take a look at who's teaching what concepts and getting the point across and who's not. What's working as far as turning that classroom upside down and what's not, that's how you sell people. That's where you go back. I had an administrator tell me once, asked me, are you faculty, are they any good? I said, yeah, they're the best I've seen. And he said, prove it. I couldn't. I did not have the assessment in place.
Interesting.
Once you have that assessment in place, it makes us better teachers. Well, there's a lot of fear with that, too.
Because you're watching, I'm the content expert, and you're watching what I'm doing. How dare you?
You're doing that just to fire me.
Interesting.
And my answer to that always was, who should be fired and who shouldn't? If they're not doing their job.
I think we have another question or comment.
We do, from Gretchen Bartleson. She asks, how do you recognize innovative people in an interview?
Oh, excellent.
Oof. An interview is a crapshoot. It really is.
A calculated 50-50 risk?
It really is. You use everything at your disposal. Google the person. Find out what they've done. You try to ask questions that are leading towards what kind of innovative things have you done. The problem that you have is it's a short little window in a space of time, and within that little window you see that person as they are projected to you during that time. I've had some very, very good hires. I'm proud of them. I've had some bad hires, and I will blame somebody else pretty quick for the bad hires, to tell you the truth. That's the thing, though. Within that short window, you've got to make a decision, and it's difficult.
Mike, how do you spot innovation? You're in a very innovative company now. How do they continue to hire innovative people?
Well, I think you tend to look as much at what they're, as Kevin said, projecting in that interview is also how they're going to fit in, and whether they're going to thrive in the kind of environment that you've got. I had one area in Georgia. We said you just have to have a high tolerance for amorphous, goals, because we got new stuff thrown at us all the time, or a high tolerance for turnover in goals and changing goals. At a council like I was at in Kentucky, you could pretty much tell how your day was going to go by what the headlines were in the paper, and you got to be prepared to do that. And also maybe ability to stay on task. So now at a company, this is a pretty small startup team, and so you're really looking for people that are going to play well in a team. Interestingly, in this, most of our staff works remotely. Out of 10 people in our team, only 2 of them live in the same town or state.
Well, I think the other thing with, particularly in higher education, innovative people are a little scary, particularly private schools who are looking to hire an innovative president. They talk in their job description when they do their searches, we need an innovative president. But the process in itself sets it up that you will never have an innovative president. With the committees and the people, a truly innovative person, a few people will be really happy and say, oh my goodness, this is the change agent we need. I think the rest, it scares them a little bit because their comfort will be disrupted. And so therefore we select someone maybe a little bit innovative, maybe not, maybe someone who's right in the middle, so that those that don't want to change still feel good, those that may want to change a little bit think there may be a shot.
See, I tend to go to my disruption theory that if an institution is doing well, you don't want to make big changes. You want someone who'll come in, keep things going well, not necessarily an administrator, but if you're looking for innovation, you're looking at someone that can build off of the past, and build off of that and build it in cooperation with faculty. If you've got dropping enrollments, you've got real issues, financial trouble, then your tolerance for risk is higher, in your sense that now we really want someone, and that some changes need to be made. So I think that plays into it as well.
Okay, we have another.
Mark Workman commented that most faculty evaluation systems are based completely on the talking head lecture model. They risk low evaluations for trying a blended hybrid model.
Interesting.
Is correct. One of the things that we did a couple of years ago was I went to the faculty and I said, well, I'm going to blow up the scheduling. I want to do something completely different with it. And as a part of that, I would like to see us teach more hybrid classes. And I went from instructor to instructor and told them, what will you think about it? It amazed me how many I had to explain what a hybrid course was. The next day, while I was walking through one of the buildings, I had an instructor pull me over and say, wow, look at this. The day before, he was questioning hybrid. He started doing some online looking, and all of a sudden, I'm in. I want to be a part of this. The thing that we're going to have to do is that we tend to teach the way we were taught. That doesn't work anymore. That simply doesn't make it anymore. And if we're going to go ahead and evaluate people, I think that innovative, if we want the innovation, we got to evaluate on that level.
Gretchen Bartleson is a distance learning dean who's looking for a new model, and she asks, do you have a model that includes evaluation for other models of instruction?
Oh, interesting question. So we tend to use assessment. We talk about assessment a lot for student learning, and changing the way we're teaching to drive is being driven by the assessment. We want to know how we're teaching, which styles, which professors are conveying the information, where the students are teaching and learning. It's an interesting point about the assessment of the faculty, and to the point of if we need to change what we want from faculty and from administrators, the assessment has to include things like, are you teaching differently, and what has the result of that teaching been on your students' learning?
Self-evaluation formatted in that framework. After the assessment, there has to be a time when the faculty can get together and assess themselves as a group. They can never forget their focus as a student and student learning. As a group, if I'm teaching concept A very well by using whatever I use, now academic freedom and demands that I give them the freedom to teach the concept in the way they best see fit. And my colleague is not teaching it so well. The assessment will show that. Then it behooves my colleague to come to me and say, okay, what are you doing? How does this work?
One of the things that we've done at eduKan is looked at the way we assess classes. And our classes would fall on a 5-year assessment cycle, because what drives assessment? Time. Should that be the guiding factor? And so now we're having conversations that we now have this data, and we can tell which classes students are successful. And you tend to have to look at the parameters. If you have a high retention rate and everyone gets an A, that may not be the most rigorous class, and so we may need to pull that in on the assessment cycle. Also, if students aren't staying in the class and the grades aren't good, they're not learning. So we're now going back and rewriting how we determine which classes need to be assessed. And so we're picking those sort of at the bottom, and what we're going back to our assessment committee with is, what are those triggers? What are those triggers that make a successful class? And then we can pull that in and find out which one. But it's to Gretchen's point, it's kind of a brave new world, and we're having to create new models to keep up.
I think one of the real challenges that we have is that we're very much an analog system right now. that the faculty member is responsible for that whole class, and it's pretty much what they put together and the way they do it. While there may be some agreements on what a course is supposed to be about and things like that, the academic freedom pretty much says, then you figure out how to do that. What we don't have is really the rich data at a very granular level that'll help us look at that course in really good objective detail, and meaning also having competencies that are very clearly specified, built by faculty, but that are very that we have, and they're sufficiently granular that we can really get down to. AAC&U has their LEAP project, which is working on some of that, but it's still at a pretty high level. We need stuff that's really down at the modular and assignment level that let us get data so that we know where they're doing a good job, where they're being challenged with this, where students are learning, where they're not. And moving it to what I think of as now a digital environment where you can start working, you get much more data, it's much more informative to you. So when you would sit down with colleagues, you know a lot more about what's going on with the students, where you're succeeding, where you're not. And that's where we can really start to make a difference. Our challenge now is that our evaluation instruments are so broad, so coarse, that we have to fill in a lot of blanks, and we don't do that very successfully.
So let's switch a little bit. We're moving right along in our time. Let's talk about literacy on a college campus. And then at the end, we'll come back and entertain questions from both sides, both the literacy and the topics we're currently discussing. Kevin, you put together a group here in Kansas to look at literacy issues, particularly on the community college campus, 19 community colleges in Kansas. Tell us a little bit about that project and why you felt the need to get this group together.
We first became concerned with our reading curriculum probably 3 years ago. And during that time, what we found out is that the curriculum was dictated to us by a test, a standardized norm test. We were talk about teaching to the test. It was beyond that. So I challenged the instructors. You make up the curriculum. You figure out what you want to do. You come up with the competencies. You're the masters of this. In the conversations that we had, we decided, I wonder what the other community colleges are doing, because they must be facing the same problem. In the state of Kansas, and it holds pretty true for every one of the 19 community colleges, fully 2/3 of the full-time students coming in on any given year are going to be in at least one developmental class. 2/3. That is horrendous. And a lot of them for reading. I don't know how it is in a lot of states, but we teach a student to read in the grade school level, elementary. Once they get to secondary level, we lack that as a concern. Well, they know how to read, that's all we need. And there are some definitions of reading that would tell you that we're not in any trouble at all. Worldwide, we're behind Sweden as of 2009, and that's it as far as our literacy rates go. If you have a child who can get through a picture book on her own, age appropriate, that is literate. If you have an adult 16 years of age or older who can only get through the same book, that's not literate, especially not on a college level. Once we got the other community colleges together, and we found out they were going everywhere. There was no standardization. There was no, it became one big cry for help. We need to do something. So we started to put together, last year, we put out a call to all the community colleges and say, if you can make it to Garden City's campus, we're going to create a statewide organization to address reading in the state of Kansas. And we got together, we put the bylaws and everything together. It is still in process. They're having their first big session or conference in the spring. And All of the other community colleges bought into it. I was amazed when we first called them together. We put out word to all 19 community colleges. 18 showed up, and 4 schools that we did not invite showed up. They were having the same problem. And it was amazing how common it was throughout the state, and that nothing was being done. It was that academic freedom. Go ye forth and teach the class. And okay, what? What are the standardized rules? What do we do here? So that was a big part of it, and that's what the impetus was to put it together. And since then, it's kind of grown. We have a lot of support. I think once they start putting together conferences, part of their bylaws will be to go up and down as far as addressing reading problem, up to the 4-year post-secondary, down to the secondary. We've already started working with high schools to address the problem. And
how does this happen? I mean, I have so many questions. How you're getting a high school graduate on your campus with a transcript who can't read? How does that happen?
The thing is, we quit paying attention to an ability to read. Also, it's something I saw during the years that I taught at the high school level, is that there was so much pressure brought to bear on instructors. You want to keep your job, you better have a pass rate, and that better be a very good pass rate. It got to a point where fully 2/3 of all our students were on honor roll. There's not much of an honor to an honor roll then. I mean, the competition went out the door. I believe that we put more emphasis on a lot of things and haven't realized that the trouble not being able to read is causing us. The poverty level, prisons, incarceration, the research that I've done, huge illiteracy problems. Well, and I'm not saying it's the cure-all, but what I am saying is, could some of it be alleviated? A big part of the health industry is billions of dollars that are spent because people can't read a pamphlet or a label on a prescription bottle. Makes a big difference.
Myk, some of the things that you guys may have used to address this, and particularly maybe at SREB, is this an issue for your schools?
Oh, it's a issue across the country, and we've looked at ways technology can impact that. In Kentucky, we did some work, and we've looked at had several rounds of developmental. And I think one of the challenges that we faced initially was this is a field that's really driven by folks who have very strong affinity for that group and want to work with them, and they tend to be come at this from the standpoint of this is very much a face-to-face, hand-holding kind of thing. And so one of the real challenges we have, and I don't know, one of my flags when I look at things, the more certain people are that technology is not going to fit what they're doing, the more likely it is I think we're going to find some good fits. And we did some things on teaching literacy and writing to folks in Kentucky that couldn't write, that were functionally illiterate, using things like speech to text and different tools like that to begin building those kind of relationships and things. Some of the things we found were, these are people who didn't thrive in that classroom environment. They were so far behind, that was a horrible place for them. And interestingly enough, they didn't necessarily thrive when someone was watching their every move and walking them through things. That having that anonymity of the computer and that kind of an experience, that they were actually a little more comfortable and they would take bigger risks. And the fear of failure and the penalty for failure wasn't so much. So we've seen promising anecdotal results out of that. What we haven't really seen are the huge, really systemic projects that have taken a lot of that and really applied it in a broad way. Still, we're seeing incremental optimization, using hybrid techniques, using technology with face-to-face. I think there's more potential to drive that further forward.
Okay, we have...
And Gretchen agrees. She believes that we've begun to realize the deep need for developmental education, but we haven't begun to address digital literacy.
And that was digital literacy was a course that we just within the last year at Garden made a requirement of, and the Board of Education or the Board of Trustees for the college made that a requirement of, we got to teach them how to be digitally literate. The interesting thing, that you spoke to, Mike, with the students and whether or not technology fit with helping reading. One of the things that we found out is we threw the idea of a 16-week course out the window. If a student needs 16 weeks, certainly we're there to give it to them for 16 weeks. But if we assess the student coming in and do a diagnostic test on them and find out exactly where their problems are, and they are low in, say, 5 areas, we give them the help, we give them the tutoring help, and there are some very good reading tutoring technologies out there. I fully expected the students to stay away from it. The idea, that the concept I had was that a student is a poor reader for a reason, and part of that may be a lack of motivation. How many of them will tell you, I hate to read? What we found out is when we sat down with them and showed them the results of the diagnostic and said, you know what, within 3 weeks you could be out of this class. They hit the technology hard. I mean, and they're still doing it.
So you're finding that and I know you don't necessarily have the numbers or the national statistics on it, but from your experience, how much of it is they just didn't learn it, they didn't pick it up, versus maybe something like dyslexia that wasn't picked up all along, or some other driver behind it, that it just wasn't that the high school teacher didn't teach it and they didn't learn it, that there maybe was something that may not have gone diagnosed?
The part of the problem that we've got at the community college level is we do not have the ability, or at least from the community colleges that I've dealt with, we do not have the ability, the expertise, the tools to assess such things as dyslexia, as a learning disability. We couldn't tell you. We had to depend on what had come up through the high schools, if it came up through the high schools. Right. We also had to depend on students actually telling us that, I am developmental, I have these needs, and I had an IEP back when I was in high school, and when we get it, if they don't tell us, we don't know.
So you bring up an interesting point. There's volumes of these students out there that faculty are engaging with who may not know that they even have a literacy problem. What are some of the key indicators? What are some things that faculty can look for to maybe say, maybe this is a reading issue that this student is dealing with? Are there?
In all the community colleges in the state of Kansas, there is mandatory placement in some areas. Tests are given. Having access to those test scores and further developing the tests. Right now we use Compass ourselves. We've done some work with the diagnostic reading with Compass. It's not very good. Compass will tell you right now their diagnostic leaves something to be desired, and they are working on it as time goes by, and this becomes more and more of a problem that people see. We're going to start seeing these tools become a lot more efficient at telling us exactly what's wrong, and having access to, for each instructor to be able to sit down and say, okay, this is the list of students I've got in my class. Where were they on these scores? And that means that those instructors, whether they're teaching reading or they're teaching math or they're teaching psychology, they have to have some knowledge of what those scores mean.
Right.
And once they get that answers the problem right there.
Gretchen wants to know if there is an online syllabus for your digital literacy course. She's working on one for her college currently.
I do not know if it is online. However, I can, if she can get me her email address, I can get her in touch with the gentleman who teaches the course, who developed the course, and definitely.
So, if you're a faculty member and the system has become more efficient and you actually have these scores, what do you then do? What are the tools and the resources available if I'm teaching a business class and I realize that the Myk didn't score very high on the reading portion?
This is another thing that we've done with our reading instructors, is we're starting to pair up by cohort. Found out that a large part of our students in a department, let's say it was John Deere. We have a John Deere Ag training facility there on campus. And if I had a large number of those students who needed reading help, why not put them in a class and give them John Deere manuals to read from? Teach from that. That's where their interest is. That's what they're going to have to do once they get out of our level. Teach from that. Also, the conversations with the reading instructors themselves, we've done a lot of that. You go around, you talk to them, and you say, okay, these are the concepts I teach. I teach cause and effect. I teach vocabulary. I teach all these things. Now, once you find out where that student's having those problems, you can help me a great deal by using that in your class, by talking about cause and effect and making them work with cause and effect. Then together, in a team effort, then we get something.
You know, it's interesting. At the conference here, you've done a session, actually 2 sessions, getting ready to go do another one, on just this topic, on identifying students with this issue and the tools and resources to help them. I'm not sure I've ever seen that topic on a faculty training. Is it being talked about? Is it an issue that when you go to a faculty conference, we're going to have sessions on literacy? We do a lot with technology. We do a lot with, but are we talking about that fundamental issue?
My belief is that developmental reading problems, literacy problems, is one of the public schools' best kept dirty little secrets. It's the thing that we're failing at miserably. When 2/3 of our students come to us and cannot read on a collegiate level, it is one of the things we're sweeping under the rug. I think that it's finally getting taken care of to the point where we're not going to sweep it under the rug anymore. We've got to address it. We can't hope to take care of bigger problems in our society. All the way from, I talked about healthcare, gender equality, just language. We can't hope to unless we teach people how to read. We think in terms of words. We think in terms of those concepts that come to us. If we don't have the vocabulary, we can't think it.
Interesting.
It's not there. If we don't have the concept of cause and effect, how do we understand logic? See what I mean? Mm-hmm. It goes much further than just the reading angle and being able to pick up a book and read it.
We're closing in on about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about some exciting things. Myk, what are some things that are happening in higher education or the periphery around higher education that you're really excited about? What are some of those disruptive innovations that you think are just going to be game changers?
Well, as the 2 trends that I'm following right now is really one around competency-based instruction as an enabler for advancement by mastery. I think that lets us change the calculus on how we come up with the cost of an education. Right now, it's you have to buy 120 credits for a baccalaureate degree. If we can change that to something that's how long does it take you to earn it on a subscription rate, that could change the way we do that. And advancement by mastery lets us now keep that learning constant and change the time frame it takes to do that. So that's one. And the foundations are really beginning to fund different pilots in those. Northern Arizona University has a personalized learning initiative for baccalaureate that is showing a lot of promise in its early design stages. South New Hampshire in what they're doing in their kind of revisioning based on mastery-based is really good as well. Tied to that is funding. Finding some new federal aid flexibility in the way those funding models are put together. While we're seeing some tightening of restrictions because of, as we're moving online and a lot of companies are coming in, we're seeing practices that are not always at the highest levels of academic standards. So that's making it tough, but I'm hopeful we're going to see more focused attention on that area as well.
So it's interesting you mentioned that we in education see the need to move that way, and schools are trying to do that. And at the same time that we're trying to move that way, you have the Department of Education who is trying to define what a clock hour of learning is, which is completely counterintuitive to mastery. If you can master the material quickly and you can prove through your competencies you understand that material, why not move along? In the converse, if it takes you 22 weeks to get that material, at least when you're done with the class, you know the material. So as we're understanding that and moving that direction, it seems the accrediting bodies and the Department of Education are trying to go in the exact opposite direction. Where does that impasse finally come to a head?
As a now external change agent,
who doesn't have to worry about their accrediting?
Yeah, I think that that begins to happen when you see models that are competency based, really forcing the issue. We're going to have to force the issue on that. And we don't have, earlier on we were talking about how do you get change going on a campus. Part of that are pilots. We need those things. The Department of Ed did distance learning demos in the early 2000s with about 10 different programs. But they really didn't open up the gates much because nobody knew quite what being innovative and breaking the rules was at that point. Now we've got a lot better idea. So I think some of these things we're seeing as pilots and one-offs are going to drive those discussions.
Kevin, what do you see that's really exciting as you can step back a little bit and take a look? What are those things from your perspectives from K through 12 or the high school level up through a college faculty member, dean and vice president of academics? Now that you can step back a little bit, where do you see some really exciting things happening?
In my opinion, right now, even though it's been around for a while, using technology in the classroom for a hybrid type course, it goes right along with that seat time that we're talking about. Can I make good use of that student's time when that student has the ability to put in time on a particular course, and not have to worry about, how many students have I had drop out over the years because, my work situation changed, and so now I can't take your class anymore. I've got to work that shift, and hey, that's how I pay the bills. If we can put this and put it in a method where students can take the class when they want to take the class, when they are able to take the class, we're going to find a lot of students that want to, but they also have to afford it. And those are the big things that I'm seeing coming down. Plus, we can do such amazing things with the technology now that we couldn't do. When I first started teaching, heck, you didn't have computers on teachers' desks. So that's exciting. Where I can go, I can teach the class online. I can meet them in the classroom, or meet with them in the classroom and discuss what they've learned. And that's a complete flip-flop from where it was. It used to be I would teach them and, okay, now go you forth and think about it. Well, now they can think about it, and that's where the good learning is going to happen in some discussions when they get back to class.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for being here. Our next show is October the 19th. We'll have Adrian Sanier from Pearson, who is a fighter for the revolution, that education must change, that we need to use cell phones in the classroom and take advantage of all those resources. Our other guest will be John Willis. Dr. Willis is a professor at St. Petersburg College in Florida, and he's like, don't bring that crap into my classroom. So we are going to have just a great discussion next week. They're both very animated, or on the 18th, 19th. They're both very animated. They are great communicators, and it will be just a fun event. Any comments left from the audience?
I think we have one coming in.
Okay. We will wait for technology to catch up to us.
Well, and as it does, I'll throw in one other trend I think is interesting to watch, and the impact is learning analytics. That's an area, analytics has big buzz right now. This is why we need competencies, because we don't really have the data to connect into that, to get that rich, robust stream you need. But analytics is going to begin driving more and more and help in informing more and more of what we do.
And to be able to assess that down to the asset level. The students struggling in Algebra 2 and the whole class is struggling with differential equations. You know what, we can now see that, and maybe we need to replace the teaching asset with something that may be more efficient. All right.
Edward Bowen wants to know more about separating gaining mastery from awarding of credit.
Oh.
Well, Ed Bowen, if it's Ed Bowen from Texas, should ask simpler questions.
He had waited till we had a minute left.
Well, you know, I think about in terms of separating it financially. That if it's a 3-credit course and you're paying for 3 credits, you're stuck, because it's always going to be how much you're paying per credit. That's why you need to move it to a time scale. And how long does it take you to earn those 3 credits? If you can earn them more quickly, then you can. It makes your degree more affordable.
Isn't the credit system really based on sort of an industrial model? I mean, it goes back to the 30s with Carnegie method that tried to define. How about something simple that if you are going to graduate with a degree in business from our institution, here are those core things that you need to know.
Well, you know, and this is a key area that we're going to have to work in, the Delta Cost Project. And one of the Gates uses the Delta Cost Project to have their different grantee applicants talk about what their savings could be. But the problem is it's based on cost per credit hour. And so a project that comes in and says, well, we're going to reduce the time to learn this, there's not an equation that you can use to show the savings in there. So I think you're right. I mean, these are core pieces, elements to the way we run our business, even though some would argue we don't run it as a business. And it's possible that that's going to remain in some vestigial way, that it's just out there, and we use that for some calculations, but we're going to have to think of some different ways of incorporating different views of savings and cost into that.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Those that are out watching, thank you for taking part in this discussion, and we will see you on October the 19th.